This is question number 13, June 2004, and in this question they have given us the demand and supply curve. They say that the demand curve, the diagram shows the demand and supply curves for a product. Which area measures the total amount consumers would be willing to pay for the equilibrium level of output? So before I do this MCQ, just a quick recap. When you look at demand curve is your willingness plus ability to pay, right? So the demand curve basically shows you all the prices which consumers are willing to pay and are able to pay, right? Now, where demand and supply meets, if you look at this quantity Z is being bought. So in other words, all the area under the demand curve for this quantity Z here, all this area under the demand curve is basically what consumers are willing to pay and able to pay. Okay, but so if you look at this, so the right answer for this one, because they're asking us about what the consumers would be willing to pay, and the answer would be O, X, Y, Z is what they are willing to pay. Okay, but just and the answer would be basically be O, X, Y, Z. But just quickly recapping other variations of this question. Sometimes they can ask you about consumer surplus, and they give you the same diagram. Consumer surplus is basically amount consumers are willing to pay minus amount they actually pay. So if ever they give you a question about consumer surplus, the answer would be what we're willing to pay would be O, X, Y, Z, which is basically all this region here, O, X, Y, Z, all this region here. While what they're actually sort of paying, these consumers are actually paying is this region here. Why is this region the amount consumers are actually paying? Is simply because price times quantity is what you actually pay. So in other words, O, W, Y, Z is what we are actually paying. Okay, and therefore the difference between O, X, Y, Z and O, W, Y, Z is your consumer surplus, which will be W, X, Y. In other words, it's going to be this rectangle here. Okay, but in this question they are simply asking us what you're willing to pay, and what you're willing to pay would be simply O, X, Y, Z, which is area under the demand curve for the quantity Z.